The sound of my fist connecting with Jerome's jaw echoed through the backyard like thunder on a summer night. His body flew backward, crashing into the picnic table where his three friends sat frozen with beer bottles halfway to their lips. Potato salad and ribs scattered everywhere as the table collapsed beneath his weight. "What the?" Darnell started to say, but he never finished. I spun around, my left leg cutting through the air like a blade. My heel caught him right in the chest, and he went down hard, gasping for breath like a fish out of water. The other two men, Terrence and Big Mike, scrambled to their feet, but fear had already stolen the color from their faces. "You thought I was just a quiet little housewife, didn't you?" I said, my voice calm as still water. "You thought you could laugh at me, mock me, put your hands on me." Jerome groaned from the ground, blood dripping from his split lip. Just 3 hours ago, he had slapped me across the face in front of these same men. They had laughed. They had called me names I won't repeat. They had said I was nothing. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Big Mike charged at me like a bull, all 300 pounds of him thundering across the grass. Poor man, he had no idea that I had spent 15 years training for moments exactly like this. He had no idea that before I became Mrs. Amara Johnson, I was known by another name in the underground kickboxing world. They called me the Silent Storm, and storms don't give warnings before they destroy everything in their path. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. You're probably wondering how a Sunday barbecue turned into the moment I finally showed my husband and his terrible friends who they were really dealing with. You're probably wondering why I kept my fighting skills a secret for 5 whole years of marriage. And you're definitely wondering what Jerome did that was so awful, it made me break my promise to never fight again. Well, grab a seat and get comfortable, because this story has twists you won't see coming. And by the end, you'll understand why sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest thunder inside them. Before I tell you the rest, I want to know where you're watching from today. Drop your city and country in the comments below. And if you want to see how this story ends, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single chapter. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Amara, and I grew up in a small apartment in Detroit with my grandmother, who everyone called Mama Rose. We didn't have much money, but we had love. And Mama Rose always said that love was the only currency that truly mattered. Mama Rose was a tiny woman, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair she kept in neat braids, and hands that were always busy cooking, cleaning, or holding mine when I was scared. She raised me alone after my parents died in a car accident when I was just 4 years old. I don't remember much about them, but Mama Rose made sure I knew they loved me more than anything in the world. "Your mama was a fighter," Mama Rose would tell me while braiding my hair at night. "Not with her fists, baby girl, but with her heart. She fought for what was right, even when it was hard, even when people told her she was wrong. You got that same fire in you, Amara. I can see it burning behind those pretty brown eyes." Growing up in our neighborhood wasn't easy. The streets were rough, and trouble had a way of finding you even when you weren't looking for it. By the time I was 12, I had already learned that being small and quiet made you a target. Bullies at school would push me around, steal my lunch money, and call me names that cut deeper than any knife. One day I came home with a black eye and torn clothes. Mama Rose took one look at me and her face went still as stone. She didn't say anything at first. She just cleaned my wounds, made me hot cocoa, and sat with me until I stopped crying. The next morning, she took me to a small gym on the east side of town. The building looked like it was about to fall down, with cracked windows and paint peeling off the walls like dead skin. A faded sign above the door read, "Champion's Corner." "This is where your grandfather trained," Mama Rose said softly. "Before he passed, he told me that if you ever needed to learn how to protect yourself, this was the place to bring you. Inside, I met Coach Bernard Williams, a tall man with shoulders like mountains and the kindest eyes I had ever seen. He was a former professional kickboxer who had won championships all over the world, but a bad injury had ended his fighting career. So he opened this gym to teach young people from the neighborhood. Most folks think fighting is about hurting people, Coach Bernard told me on that first day, but real fighting is about protecting yourself and the people you love. It's about discipline, respect, and knowing when to use your skills and when to walk away. For the next 15 years, Coach Bernard became like a father to me. I trained every single day, even when I was tired, even when I was sad, even when life felt too heavy to carry. Kickboxing gave me strength I didn't know I had. It taught me that my small body could be a weapon if I trained it right. It showed me that the quiet girl everyone underestimated could become something powerful. By the time I was 25, I had won 12 underground kickboxing tournaments. They called me the Silent Storm because I never talked trash like other fighters. I never boasted or bragged. I just walked into the ring quiet as a whisper, and then I unleashed thunder and lightning on anyone who stood across from me. But fighting also cost me things. It cost me friendships with people who didn't understand why I spent all my time at the gym. It cost me relationships with men who felt threatened by a woman who could knock them out with one kick. And eventually it almost cost me my life. The last fight I ever had was against a woman named Vicious Vicky. She was mean, dirty, and didn't care about rules. During our match, she hit me with an illegal elbow strike that cracked 3 of my ribs and punctured my lung. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital fighting for every breath. Mama Rose sat by my bed the whole time, holding my hand and praying. When I finally woke up, she looked at me with tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. "Baby girl," she whispered, "you've proven everything you needed to prove. You're strong, you're brave. You're a warrior, but I can't lose you too, please. Promise me you'll stop fighting." Looking into her tired, loving eyes, I couldn't say no. I made a promise that day that I would never fight again. I would hang up my gloves, leave the silent storm behind, and build a normal life. And I kept that promise. For 5 whole years, I kept it. Then I met Jerome Johnson at a church picnic, and everything changed. Jerome was charming. Lord, that man could charm the birds right out of the trees. He had a smile that lit up his whole face and a laugh that made you want to laugh too. He was tall, handsome, and worked as a manager at a car dealership. He brought me flowers on our first date. He held doors open for me. He called me beautiful every single day. Mama Rose liked him at first. "He seems like a good man," she said after meeting him. "But remember, baby girl, some people are real good at seeming. You watch him. Watch how he treats people who can't do nothing for him. That's how you know who someone really is." I should have listened more carefully to her words. Jerome and I got married after dating for 1 year. The wedding was small but beautiful, held in the same church where we met. I wore my mother's wedding dress, which Mama Rose had kept safe all those years. When Jerome lifted my veil and kissed me, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. But luck, like seasons, has a way of changing. The first time Jerome raised his voice at me was 3 months after our wedding. We were arguing about dishes, something so small and stupid that I can barely remember the details now. Suddenly, his face twisted into something ugly, something I had never seen before. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" he shouted, veins popping in his neck. "You think you're better than me?" I was so shocked that I couldn't speak. This wasn't the sweet man who had promised to love and cherish me forever. This was someone else entirely, a stranger wearing my husband's face. He apologized later. He cried and said he was stressed about work. He bought me roses and took me to dinner. And because I wanted to believe in the man I married, I forgave him. That was my first mistake. The yelling became more frequent over the next year. Then came the name-calling. He would tell me I was stupid, worthless, lucky that he even married me. He said these things when we were alone, always behind closed doors where no one else could hear. In public, he was still charming Jerome, but at home, he was becoming a monster. I kept my secret too. I never told him about my fighting past. Part of me was ashamed of those underground tournaments, of the violence that had once been my whole life. And part of me was scared that if he knew how strong I really was, things would get worse instead of better. So I stayed quiet. I made myself small. I became the obedient wife he seemed to want, hoping that if I was good enough, the old Jerome would come back to me. Mama Rose passed away 2 years into my marriage. Losing her broke something inside me. She was the only person who truly knew me, the only one who remembered the silent storm. With her gone, I felt more alone than ever. Jerome wasn't much comfort. At the funeral, he complained about the food. On the drive home, he asked when I was going to get over it so life could go back to normal. That night, I cried alone in the bathroom while he watched football in the living room. But even after all that, I stayed. Because where would I go? What would I do? Jerome controlled all our money, my fighting days were behind me, and a small, broken part of me still believed I could fix things if I just tried harder. Then came the Sunday barbecue, the day everything changed. Jerome invited his friends over to celebrate a big sale he made at the dealership. Darnell, Terrence, Big Mike, and their wives all showed up. I spent all morning cooking. Ribs, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, potato salad. My back ached and my feet hurt. But I wanted everything to be perfect. The wives helped me in the kitchen while the men sat in the backyard, drinking beer and getting louder by the hour. I could hear them laughing and joking through the window. At first I smiled. It was nice to see Jerome happy. Then I heard my name. "Amara's got you whipped, man," Big Mike said with a booming laugh. "You out here asking permission to go fishing next weekend? What kind of man asks permission from his wife?" The other men laughed. I waited for Jerome to defend me, to say something kind about our marriage. Instead, he said, "Man, Amara ain't nothing but a mouse. She does whatever I tell her. Watch, I'll prove it." Before I could move, Jerome was walking through the back door into the kitchen. His eyes were glassy from too much beer, and that ugly expression I knew too well was spreading across his face. "Amara," he barked, "get out there and bring us more beer. Now, tster." I was standing by the stove stirring gravy. "I'll bring it in just a minute, Jerome. I'm almost done with—" The slap came out of nowhere. His palm connected with my cheek so hard that I stumbled backward into the counter. The pot of gravy crashed to the floor. Hot liquid splashed everywhere. Pain exploded across the side of my face. The kitchen went silent. Keisha, Big Mike's wife, gasped and covered her mouth. Tanya and Renee, the other wives, looked down at their feet, unable to meet my eyes. "When I tell you to do something, you do it," Jerome growled. "Don't ever disrespect me in front of my boys again." He grabbed a handful of beer bottles from the fridge and walked back outside. Through the window, I heard him laughing with his friends. "Told y'all she was nothing but a mouse." And they all laughed with him. I stood there frozen, my cheek burning and tears running down my face. The wives mumbled excuses and hurried outside. I was alone in my own kitchen, surrounded by spilled gravy and shattered dreams. Something inside me snapped. It was small at first, like a tiny crack in a dam, but that crack was spreading, and behind it was 15 years of training, 15 years of power that I had locked away. Mama Rose's voice echoed in my mind. "You got that same fire in you, Amara." Coach Bernard's words followed. "Real fighting is about protecting yourself and the people you love." I had made a promise to Mama Rose that I would never fight again. But Mama Rose was gone now, and I had spent 5 years being a mouse, letting this man and his terrible friends shrink me down to nothing. No more. I wiped my tears away with the back of my hand. I untied my apron and let it fall to the floor. Then I walked toward the back door. It was time to show Jerome Johnson exactly who he had married. It was time for the silent storm to return. I stepped through that back door like I was stepping into a boxing ring. The afternoon sun hit my face, warm and bright, but inside me, everything had gone cold and calm. That's how it always was before a fight. The world would slow down, my breathing would steady, and every muscle in my body would wake up and get ready. Jerome was sitting at the picnic table with his back to me, still laughing with his friends about how he had just slapped his own wife. Big Mike was slapping his knee, tears of laughter rolling down his fat cheeks. Darnell was shaking his head with an ugly grin. Terrence was recording everything on his phone, probably planning to post it somewhere later. "Yo, she probably still standing there crying," Darnell said. "You really trained her good, Jerome. That's how you gotta handle these women," Jerome replied, taking a long sip of his beer. "Show them who's boss from day one. My daddy taught me that. You give a woman an inch, she'll take a mile. But you put her in her place, she'll never step out of line again." The other men nodded like he was sharing some great wisdom, like he was some kind of teacher instead of a bully and a coward. "Jerome," my voice cut through their laughter like a knife through butter. All four men turned around to look at me. Jerome had a smirk on his face, probably expecting me to apologize for embarrassing him or to bring more beer like he ordered. But then he saw my eyes, the smirk faded. "What are you looking at me like that for?" he asked, standing up slowly. "You got something to say?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady as a heartbeat. "I do." I walked toward him, and with each step, I felt the silent storm rising up inside me. My fists clenched at my sides. My feet found their fighting stance without me even thinking about it. 15 years of muscle memory woke up like it had never been asleep. "Amara, you better watch your tone," Jerome warned. He puffed up his chest, trying to look big and scary. "I already had to teach you one lesson today. Don't make me teach you another one." "You've been teaching me lessons for 5 years," I said. "The yelling, the name-calling, the control. And now you put your hands on me in front of your friends like I'm not even human." I stopped about 3 feet away from him, close enough to see the confusion in his eyes, close enough to smell the beer on his breath. "But here's the thing, Jerome. You never asked about my past. You never asked who I was before I met you. You were so busy trying to make me small that you never wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was more to me than you could see." Big Mike laughed nervously. "Jerome, man, I think your wife done lost her mind." "Shut up, Mike," Jerome snapped. He was staring at me now, really staring, and for the first time since our wedding day, I saw something flicker in his eyes, something that looked almost like fear. "What are you talking about, Amara?" he asked. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile I used to wear right before a fight, the smile that told my opponent they had already lost but just didn't know it yet. "I'm talking about the fact that you married a woman named the Silent Storm. I'm talking about 12 underground kickboxing championships. I'm talking about the fact that I could have knocked you out anytime I wanted for the past 5 years. But I made a promise to someone I loved that I would never fight again." The backyard went dead silent. A bird chirped somewhere in the distance. A car drove by on the street, but nobody at that picnic table made a single sound. "You're lying," Jerome said, but his voice cracked on the last word. "Am I?" I shifted my weight onto my back foot, just slightly, the way Coach Bernard taught me 1,000 times. It was such a small movement that most people wouldn't even notice it, but it put my body in the perfect position to strike. "Last chance, Jerome. Apologize to me. Right here, right now, in front of your friends. Get down on your knees and tell me you're sorry for every terrible thing you've done. And maybe, just maybe, I'll let this go. For a moment, just a moment, I thought he might actually do it. I saw the fear growing in his eyes. I saw his hands start to shake. Some small part of him, some survival instinct buried deep down, was telling him to listen to me. But then Darnell opened his big mouth. Man, are you gonna let your wife talk to you like that? She's bluffing, bro, but look at her. She's tiny. Just put her back in her place. That was all Jerome needed. The fear in his eyes turned to anger. His pride wouldn't let him back down in front of his boys. He balled up his fist and drew back his arm. You want to see who's boss? He snarled. I'll show you who's boss. He swung at me. And that's when the silent storm was finally unleashed. Time seemed to slow down as his fist came toward my face. I had seen 1,000 punches just like it over the years, thrown by fighters way faster and stronger than Jerome. To me, his swing looked like it was moving through honey, slow, sloppy, predictable. I ducked under his fist so easily that I almost laughed. His punch sailed over my head, hitting nothing but air. The momentum of his swing threw him off balance, and in that split second of weakness, I struck. My right fist drove into his stomach with everything I had. I felt the air rush out of his lungs. His eyes went wide with shock and pain. Before he could even start to double over, I was already spinning, building power in my hips and legs. My left fist connected with his jaw in a perfect hook. The sound was like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Jerome's head snapped to the side and his whole body followed. He flew backward, crashing into the picnic table where his friends sat frozen in disbelief. Ribs went flying, beer bottles shattered, potato salad splattered everywhere like yellow snow. Jerome lay there in the wreckage, groaning, blood dripping from his split lip. He tried to get up, but his arms were shaking too badly. He looked up at me with eyes full of confusion and terror, like he was seeing me for the first time. That's for the slap, I said calmly. Now who's next? Darnell was the first to unfreeze. He jumped up from his overturned chair, his face twisted with rage. Oh, you done messed up now, he growled. I don't care if you're a woman. Nobody does that to my boy. He charged at me like a football player going for a tackle. His arms were spread wide, trying to grab me in a bear hug. Another amateur mistake. Wrestlers and grapplers can be dangerous, but only if they get their hands on you. They have to catch you first. I waited until he was almost on top of me, then I sidestepped to the left. As he stumbled past, I brought my knee up hard into his midsection. He gasped as the air left his body. Before he could recover, I spun and delivered a devastating roundhouse kick to his chest. The kick lifted him off his feet. He flew backwards several feet and landed on the grass with a heavy thud. He lay there wheezing, clutching his ribs, tears streaming down his face. Stay down, I warned him, unless you want more. He didn't move. Big Mike rose slowly from the ground where he had fallen when the table collapsed. At 300 pounds, he was by far the biggest threat. But size doesn't matter as much as people think. In fact, big guys have a lot of weaknesses that smaller fighters can exploit. They're slow, they tire quickly, and they have a long way to fall. Look, Amar, Big Mike said, holding up his hands. I don't want no trouble. This ain't got nothing to do with me. I was just laughing along, you know. I didn't mean nothing by it. You laughed when my husband hit me, I said, walking toward him. You made jokes about me. You called me a mouse. I was just playing around, that's all. Come on now, can't we just... He lunged at me. I should have known he wouldn't really surrender. Men like Big Mike don't know how to admit defeat. They've spent their whole lives using their size to bully people smaller than them. But I wasn't most people. As his massive arms reached for me, I dropped low and swept his legs out from under him. 300 pounds of man came crashing down like a fallen tree. The ground actually shook when he hit it. Before he could try to get up, I delivered a precise kick to his shoulder that made him howl in pain, then another kick to his other shoulder. Now both his arms were useless. He lay there on his back like a turtle, unable to roll over, unable to defend himself. "Please," he whimpered, "please stop." That left only Terrence. He was the youngest of Jerome's friends, maybe 25 years old. He had been recording on his phone earlier, but now the phone lay forgotten on the grass. His hands were trembling. His legs were shaking. He looked like he was about to cry. "I don't want to fight," he said quickly. "I surrender. I give up. Please don't hurt me." I stared at him for a long moment. Part of me wanted to teach him a lesson too. He had been right there laughing with the others. He had watched Jerome slap me and thought it was entertainment. But there was something in his eyes that made me pause. Real fear, yes, but also something else. Shame, regret. He looked like a young man who had just realized he had been following the wrong people his whole life. "You recorded my husband hitting me," I said. He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. They're all wrong." "I see that now. Where's your phone?" He pointed to where it lay in the grass. "Take it. Delete everything. I won't tell nobody what happened here. I swear on my mama's life." I walked over and picked up the phone. The screen showed that it was still recording. I stopped the video and looked at it. There was footage of Jerome slapping me in the kitchen, visible through the window. There was footage of the men laughing about it, and there was footage of me fighting back. Part of me wanted to delete all of it, but another part of me realized this video could be important. It was proof of what Jerome had done. It was evidence that I had acted in self-defense. I slipped the phone into my pocket. "You're going to leave," I told Terrence, "right now, and you're going to think long and hard about the kind of man you want to be. You can keep following fools like Jerome, laughing when then they hurt people and treating women like property. Or you can be better. The choice is yours." He nodded frantically and scrambled to his feet. Without looking back, he ran around the side of the house. A few seconds later, I heard a car engine start and tires squealing as he drove away. Now it was just me and the three men groaning on the ground. The wives had been watching from the kitchen window. I could see their faces pressed against the guays, eyes wide with shock. Keisha, Big Mike's wife, had her hand over her mouth. But she didn't look scared. She looked almost happy. I wondered how many times Big Mike had treated her the same way Jerome treated me. Jerome managed to push himself up to a sitting position. His face was a mess. His lip was busted open. His jaw was already starting to swell. He looked at me with pure hatred burning in his eyes. "You're dead," he growled. "You hear me? When I get up from here, you're dead. I'm gonna make you pay for this. You're gonna what, Jerome?" I walked over and stood right in front of him. "You're gonna hit me again? You're gonna yell at me? You're gonna tell me I'm worthless?" I crouched down so I was at his eye level. I've been hit by champions. Real fighters who train their whole lives. You think I'm scared of you? You're nothing. You've always been nothing. The only power you ever had over me was the power I gave you, and I'm taking it back. He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get your things out of my house. Yes, my house. I had checked the deed years ago. My grandmother left it to me, not to us. You just moved in and acted like you owned the place. You have 1 week to be gone." "You can't do this," he sputtered. "I'm your husband. We're married. I have rights." "You lost your rights when you put your hands on me. And don't even think about going to the police. You see your friends lying here? They attacked me. I defended myself. I have a witness who ran away and a video on his phone that shows everything. Any judge in the country would be on my side." Jerome's face went pale. For the first time, I think he truly understood that the game had changed. He wasn't dealing with quiet, scared Amara anymore. He was dealing with the silent storm. I stood up and looked around my backyard at the destruction. The broken table, the scattered food, the three grown men lying in the grass, moaning in pain. It looked like a tornado had come through. In a way, one had. "I'm going inside now," I announced. "When I come back out in 1 hour, I want all of you gone. I don't care how you get home. Call a taxi. Call your wives. Crawl if you have to. But if I see any of your faces on my property after that, what just happened will feel like a gentle massage compared to what I'll do next." I turned and walked toward the house. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from adrenaline. 15 years of training had come rushing back like it had never left. My body remembered everything: the stances, the strikes, the way to generate power from my hips, the way to stay calm when chaos erupted around me. Coach Bernard would have been proud. Mama Rose would have understood. I pushed through the back door into the kitchen. The three wives were standing there, still frozen, still staring. Keisha was the first to move. She rushed over and threw her arms around me. "I've been wanting to see someone do that for years," she whispered in my ear. "Thank you." I hugged her back, and suddenly I felt tear pricking at my eyes. Not sad tears, relief tears. The tears of a woman who had finally stopped being afraid. "Are you okay?" Tanya asked softly. "That was incredible, but are you okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I think so. I think I'm better than I've been in a long time." Renee, who had been the quietest of the three, finally spoke up. "We knew Jerome was bad. We all knew. But we never said anything because our husbands were his friends and we didn't want to cause trouble." "It's not your fault," I said. "We all do what we think we have to do to survive." The four of us stood there in the ruined kitchen, surrounded by spilled gravy and broken dreams, but also surrounded by something else: understanding, solidarity, the silent bond between women who have all been made to feel small by men who should have lifted them up. "What are you going to do now?" Keisha asked. I thought about it for a moment. What was I going to do? My whole life had just changed in the span of 15 minutes. I had broken a 5-year promise. I had destroyed my marriage. I had unleashed a part of myself I thought was gone forever. But I had also taken back my power. "I'm going to start over," I said. "I'm going to figure out who Amara really is, not who Jerome wanted me to be. And I'm going to help other women like me. Women who have been beaten down and made to feel worthless. Women who have forgotten how strong they really are." Keisha nodded slowly. "That sounds beautiful." "It does," Tanya agreed. "But Amara, you need to be careful. Jerome isn't going to let this go. He's a proud man, a mean man. And when mean men get embarrassed, they get dangerous." She was right. I knew she was right. Jerome wasn't the type to slink away quietly. He would want revenge. He would want to hurt me worse than I had hurt him. And he had connections that I didn't know about. Friends in places that could make my life very difficult. But right now, in this moment, I couldn't bring myself to worry about tomorrow. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like myself again. I felt like the silent storm. And storms don't hide from trouble. They meet it head on. I walked over to the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard. The three men were still on the ground, but they were starting to move. Jerome had managed to get to his knees. He was helping Darnell stand up. Big Mike was rolling onto his stomach, trying to push himself up with his injured arms. They looked pathetic. These men who had felt so powerful just an hour ago. These men who had laughed at my pain and mocked my existence. Now they could barely stand. But as I watched Jerome help Darnell limp toward the side gate, something caught my eye. Something that made my blood run cold. Jerome stopped and looked back at the house. He looked right at the kitchen window, right at me. And even from this distance, even with his face swollen and bloody, I could see the look in his eyes. It wasn't defeat. It was planning. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell phone. He put it to his ear and started talking to someone. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his expression was dark and determined. Then he smiled, a cruel, ugly smile that I had seen many times before. The smile he wore when he was about to do something terrible. He pointed at the house, right at me, and said something into the phone. Then he laughed. That laugh sent a chill down my spine because I realized something that I should have known all along. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Jerome had someone on the other end of that phone, someone who could help him, someone who could make things very bad for me. And whoever it was, they were about to learn that the silent storm had returned. But first, I needed to figure out what I was really up against. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It would have been beautiful if my mind wasn't racing with worry about that phone call Jerome had made. Who had he called? What was he planning? The wives had left about 30 minutes after the fight. Keisha hugged me one more time before she went, pressing a small piece of paper into my hand. My phone number, she whispered. If you ever need anything, day or night, you call me. What you did today gave me courage I didn't know I needed. Big Mike and I are going to have a long talk tonight. A very long talk. I watched her walk out the front door, and I hoped that talk would change things for her. I hoped she would find her own strength, her own storm inside her. Nobody deserves to live in fear of the person who promised to love them. After everyone was gone, I cleaned up the kitchen. I swept up the broken glass. I mopped up the spilled gravy. I wiped down the counters until they sparkled. It was mindless work, but it helped calm my thoughts. My cheeks still hurt where Jerome had slapped me. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. A bruise was forming, purple and angry against my brown skin. I touched it gently and winced. This is the last bruise he will ever give me, I said to my reflection. I promise, boss. My reflection stared back at me with determined eyes, eyes that had seen too much pain, eyes that were finally ready to fight back. I went to the bedroom and started packing Jerome's things. I pulled his clothes out of the closet and threw them into garbage bags. His fancy suits, his expensive shoes, his collection of cologne bottles that cost more than our grocery bill. All of it went into the bags. With each item I packed, I felt lighter, like I was removing pieces of a heavy chain that had been wrapped around my neck for 5 years. By the time I was done, there were 8 garbage bags lined up in the hallway, stuffed full of Jerome's belongings. I dragged them to the front porch and left them there. Let him come get them. Let him see that I was serious. This was my house, my life, and he was no longer welcome in either one. The house felt different with his things gone. Bigger somehow, quieter, more peaceful. I walked through each room, touching the walls, remembering what it felt like when this was Mama Rose's home, when it was filled with love and laughter instead of fear and tears. I'm taking it back, Mama Rose, I whispered. I'm taking back everything he stole from me. I ended up in the spare bedroom at the end of the hall. This was where Mama Rose used to sleep before she passed. I had kept it exactly the way she left it. Her quilts on the bed, her Bible on the nightstand, her reading glasses folded neatly on top. I sat down on the bed and picked up her Bible. It fell open to a page she had marked with a faded ribbon. Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I missed her so much. She would have known exactly what to say right now. She would have held my hand and told me everything was going to be okay. She would have made me feel safe. But Mama Rose was gone, and I had to find that safety within myself. I was about to close the Bible when I noticed something strange. The back cover felt thicker than it should. I ran my fingers along the edge and felt a slight bump, like something was hidden underneath the fabric lining. Curious, I carefully peeled back the corner of the lining. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. My heart started beating faster as I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a letter written in Mama Rose's beautiful handwriting. My dearest Amara, it began, if you are reading this, it means I have gone home to be with the Lord, and it means you needed to find this letter. I always believe that important things reveal themselves when the time is right. There are things I never told you, baby girl. Things about your parents, things about our family, things I kept secret because I wanted to protect you. But secrets have a way of causing more harm than good. And I think it's time you knew the truth. Your mother was a fighter just like you. I don't mean she had a fighting spirit, although she had plenty of that. I mean she was an actual fighter, a boxer, one of the best female boxers in Detroit back in her day. They called her Lightning Lena because her hands were so fast, people swore they saw sparks when she threw a punch. She met your father at one of her matches. He was a trainer at a rival gym, but the moment he saw her fight, he fell in love. They were married within a year, and then you came along and made their joy complete. But your mother had enemies. There was a man named Cornelius Drake who ran illegal gambling operations throughout the city. He wanted your mother to throw fights so he could win big money betting against her. She refused. She said she would never compromise her honor, no matter how much money he offered. Cornelius didn't take rejection well. He threatened her. He threatened your father. He even threatened baby you, still in your crib. But your mother stood firm. She reported him to the police, and he was sent to prison for 5 years. The car accident that killed your parents was not an accident, Amara. It was murder. Cornelius Drake arranged it from his prison cell. He had connections everywhere. He wanted revenge, and he got it. I never told you because I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew the truth, you would go looking for justice. Afraid that Cornelius would find out you were still alive and come after you too. So I kept you hidden. I changed your last name from Williams to my maiden name, Robinson. I moved us to a different neighborhood. I did everything I could to keep you safe. But keeping you safe also meant keeping you in the dark. And for that, I am sorry. Cornelius Drake was released from prison 8 years ago. I don't know where he is now or what he's doing. But I need you to be careful, baby girl. There are dangerous people in this world who never forget a grudge. I hid some money for you in case you ever need to run or fight. It's in a safety deposit box at First National Bank on Jefferson Avenue. The key is taped to the bottom of my jewelry box. There's also a letter there from your mother, one she wrote for you before she died. She wanted you to have it when you were old enough to understand. I love you more than words can say, Amara. You are the light of my life, the daughter of my heart, even if not of my body. Everything I did to protect you. I hope you can forgive me for the secrets. Stay strong, stay brave, and never, ever let anyone make you forget how powerful you are. Forever yours, Mama Rose. The letter fell from my trembling hands. My parents were murdered. Mama Rose had known all along. There was a man out there named Cornelius Drake who had destroyed my family and might still want to destroy me. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. I sat there on Mama Rose's bed for a long time trying to process what I had just read. My mother was a boxer, a real boxer who was so good they called her Lightning Lena. That's why Coach Bernard had agreed to train me. That's why Mama Rose had taken me to his gym. It wasn't just about protecting myself from schoolyard bullies. It was about carrying on my mother's legacy. And my father was a trainer. Fighting was in my blood from both sides. No wonder it had come so naturally to me. No wonder I had risen through the underground kickboxing ranks so quickly. I wasn't just talented, I was born for this. But Cornelius Drake, that name sent ice through my veins. A man powerful enough to have my parents killed from inside a prison cell. A man who had been free for 8 years doing who knows what. Did he know about me? Did he know that Lightning Lena's daughter was still alive? I thought about Jerome's phone call earlier. The evil smile on his face as he pointed at the house and talked to whoever was on the other end. Could there be a connection? It seemed impossible. Jerome was just a car salesman with a bad temper. What could he possibly have to do with an old crime boss? But then again, I never really knew Jerome at all. I thought I had married a charming, kind man. Instead, I had married a monster who hid behind a pretty smile. Who knows what other secrets he was keeping? I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start looking. I went to Mama Rose's dresser and opened her jewelry box. It was filled with simple treasures, costume jewelry that she loved, a brooch that belonged to her mother, a pair of pearl earrings she wore to church every Sunday. I lifted the velvet lining at the bottom of the box, and there it was, a small silver key taped in place just like the letter said. First National Bank on Jefferson Avenue. That's where I needed to go. But first, I needed to deal with a more immediate problem. Jerome was still out there planning something, and until I knew what he was planning, I couldn't let my guard down for a second. I went to the closet in the spare bedroom and pushed aside Mama Rose's old dresses. In the back, hidden behind a stack of shoeboxes, was a locked trunk. I had discovered it years ago, but never had the key to open it. Now I wondered if maybe the same key that opened the safety deposit box might work on this trunk too. I knelt down and inserted the small silver key into the trunk's lock. It didn't fit. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. I examined the trunk more closely. It was old, made of thick wood with brass fittings. The lock looked simple enough. Back in my fighting days, one of the other girls at the gym had taught me how to pick basic locks. She said every woman should know how to get into places she wasn't supposed to be. I found a bobby pin in Mama Rose's bathroom and went to work on the lock. It took me about 10 minutes, but finally I heard a satisfying click. The trunk popped open. Inside was a treasure trove of memories. Old photographs, newspaper clippings, a pair of red boxing gloves that looked well worn, but lovingly preserved. I picked up the gloves and held them to my chest. These must have been my mother's. I could almost feel her energy in them, her strength, her fighting spirit. She had worn these gloves when she became Lightning Lena. She had worn them when she refused to bow down to Cornelius Drake, and now they were mine. I set the gloves aside and looked through the photographs. There was my mother, young and strong, her fists raised in a fighting stance. She was beautiful. I had her eyes, her cheekbones, her determined jaw. Looking at her was like looking into a mirror that showed me who I could have been if she had lived. There was my father standing behind her with his hands on her shoulders, pride shining in his face. He was tall and handsome, with a gentle smile that seemed out of place in a boxing gym. And there was baby me, held in my mother's arms, both of us laughing at something the camera didn't capture. Tears streamed down my face as I looked through more photos. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, lazy Sunday afternoons. A whole life that had been stolen from me by a man who couldn't accept the word no. At the bottom of the trunk, I found a stack of newspaper clippings. Most of them were about my mother's boxing career. Lightning Lena strikes again, one headline read. Undefeated champion dominates local circuit, said another. But the last few clippings were different. They were about the accident. Young couple killed in tragic crash, the headline announced. Toddler survives horrific highway collision. I read through the articles with shaking hands. According to the newspaper, my parents' car had been hit by a drunk driver who ran a red light. The driver fled the scene and was never found. My parents died instantly. I was pulled from the wreckage by a passing truck driver who heard me crying. A drunk driver who was never found. How convenient. How easy to believe. The perfect cover story for a murder. I set down the clippings and noticed one more item in the trunk. An envelope with my name written on it in handwriting I didn't recognize. This must be the letter from my mother that Mama Rose mentioned. But before I could open it, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. Glass breaking. Downstairs. Someone was in my house. I grabbed my mother's boxing gloves and slipped them on. They fit perfectly. like they had been made for me. Then I crept out of the spare bedroom and moved silently toward the stairs. Voices drifted up from the first floor. Male voices, at least two of them, maybe three. "Check the kitchen," one voice said. "I'll look upstairs." "Boss said to make it look like a robbery gone wrong," another voice replied. "Like some stuff, mess up the place, then handle the woman." Handle the woman. They were here to kill me. I pressed myself against the wall at the top of the stairs, my heart pounding, but my mind crystal clear. This was what I had trained for. This was what the silent storm was born to do. Heavy footsteps started coming up the stairs. I counted them. One person, probably the one who said he would look upstairs. The others were still down below, making noise as they robbed my home. The footsteps got closer. Closer. I could hear the intruder breathing now, heavy and confident. He thought he was hunting a helpless woman. He had no idea he was walking into a storm. The moment his head appeared above the top step, I struck. My right fist, wrapped in my mother's red boxing glove, connected with his temple. The impact was beautiful, clean, perfect. He dropped like a sack of potatoes, unconscious before he hit the floor. One down, at least two to go. "Tyrell," one of the voices called from downstairs. "Tyrell, you good?" I didn't answer. Let them wonder, let them worry. "Tyrell, stop playing around, man. Answer me." Footsteps approached the bottom of the stairs. Another man appeared, looking up with confusion on his face. Confusion that turned to shock when he saw his friend lying unconscious at my feet. "What the—" I was already moving. I leaped down the stairs, using the railing to launch myself at him. My foot caught him in the chest before he could react, and we both went tumbling to the ground. He was bigger than me, stronger, but I was faster and better trained. Before he could recover from the fall, I was on top of him, my elbow driving down into his face. Once, twice, three times. He stopped moving. Two down. But I knew there was at least one more. I rolled off the unconscious man and sprang to my feet, scanning the room. The living room was a mess. They had overturned furniture, broken my television, scattered Mama Rose's books across the floor. A shadow moved in the kitchen doorway. "Impressive," a voice said, a calm voice. A voice that sounded like it was used to being obeyed. "Very impressive. They told me you had skills, but I didn't believe them." A man stepped out into the kitchen. He was older than the other two, maybe in his 50s, with gray hair cut close to his scalp and a scar running down the left side of his face. He wore an expensive suit and held a gun pointed directly at my chest. "You must be Amara," he said. "Or should I call you what your mother was called? Little Lightning, perhaps. I've been looking for you for a very long time." My heart stopped. He knew about my mother. He knew who I really was. "Who are you, I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled. It was a cold smile, empty of any real emotion. "My name is Marcus Drake, and I'm here to finish what my father started 20 years ago." Drake. Marcus Drake. The son of Cornelius Drake, the man who had murdered my parents, and now he was standing in my living room with a gun pointed at my heart. The letter from my mother was still upstairs, unread. The safety deposit box remained unopened. The full truth about my family was still hidden, and I might never live to discover any of it. Marcus Drake took a step closer, the gun never wavering. "You know your mother was given a choice. Work with my father or die. She chose death. Stupid. Really, all that talent, wasted because of pride." "My mother was a hero," I spat. "She stood up to evil. She did the right thing." "The right thing?" He laughed. "The right thing got her killed. The right thing left you an orphan. Tell me, Amara, was it worth it? All those years without parents, without knowing who you really are? Was your mother's pride worth all that suffering?" I didn't answer. I was too busy calculating the distance between us. About 8 feet, too far to close before he could pull the trigger. I needed to get closer. I needed a distraction. Jerome sent you, I said, keeping him talking. That's who he called earlier. That's how you found me. Marcus nodded approvingly. Smart girl. Yes, your husband has been useful. He's been reporting on you for the past 3 years. Every time you mentioned your grandmother, your childhood, anything about your past, he passed it along to us. It took a while, but eventually we pieced together who you really were. 3 years. Jerome had been spying on me for 3 years. Our entire marriage had been a lie, not just because he was abusive, but because he had been working with the people who killed my parents. Why, I asked, why go through all that trouble? I was just a baby when my parents died. I didn't know anything. I wasn't a threat to anyone. You weren't a threat then, Marcus agreed. But your mother made a lot of people very angry before she died. She testified against my father. She helped put him in prison. There were others who went down too, powerful people who lost everything because of Lightning Lena and her big mouth. Some of those people want revenge on anyone connected to her, and some of them are willing to pay very well for that revenge. So that's what this was about, money. Someone was paying Marcus Drake to kill me just because of who my mother was. Who? I demanded. Who's paying you? Marcus shook his head. That's not information you need. You'll be dead soon anyway. But I'll tell you this much, Amara. Your mother made enemies in very high places. This goes beyond my father's little gambling operation. This goes all the way to the top. The top of what? Politics? Business? Organized crime? My mind raced with possibilities, but there was no time to figure it out. Marcus raised the gun higher, aiming at my head. Any last words? I'll give you that much, out of respect for your mother. She fought well at the end, even though she knew she couldn't win. I expect you'll do the same. I looked at the gun, then at Marcus's cold eyes, then at the 2 unconscious men on my floor. I thought about Mama Rose and her secrets. I thought about Coach Bernard and his training. I thought about my mother, Lightning Lena, who had died rather than betray her principles. I thought about everything I had survived to get to this moment, and I smiled. Yeah, I said, I have some last words. Duck. Marcus frowned. What? A heavy frying pan came swinging out of nowhere, connecting with the back of his head with a loud clang. His eyes rolled back and he crumpled to the floor, the gun falling from his limp fingers. Behind him stood Keisha, breathing hard, holding the frying pan like a baseball bat. I told you to call me late if you needed anything, she said. Good thing I decided to come back and check on you. I stared at her in disbelief. Then I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The whole situation was so crazy, so impossible. That laughter was the only response that made sense. Keisha started laughing too. We stood there in my destroyed living room, surrounded by unconscious criminals, laughing until tears rolled down our faces. Girl, I finally managed to say, you have no idea how glad I am that you came back. I had a feeling, she said. Call it women's intuition. I dropped Big Mike off at his mama's house and told him not to come home until he learned how to be a real man. Then something told me to turn around and come back here. And when I saw that van parked outside your house with no lights on, I knew something was wrong. She had saved my life. This woman I barely knew, who had watched me fight just hours ago, had come back and saved my life with a frying pan. We need to call the police, I said, kicking Marcus's gun away from his unconscious body. And I need to tell you something big, something that changes everything. Keisha looked at the mess around us, at the 3 unconscious men, at my face still bruised from Jerome's slap. Honey, she said, I think you need to tell me a lot of things, but first, let's tie these fools up before they wake up. You got any rope? As we secured the intruders with extension cords and belts, I told Keisha everything. About Mama Rose's letter, about my mother being Lightning Lena, about Cornelius Drake and the murder disguised as a car accident, about Jerome being a spy for the people who killed my parents. By the time I finished, her mouth was hanging open. "This is like a movie," she breathed. "Amara, this is insane." "I know, and I still don't have all the answers. There's more to discover." A safety deposit box with money and a letter from my mother. And whoever hired Marcus Drake is still out there, still wanting me dead. So what do we do? I looked down at Marcus Drake, still unconscious on my floor. When he woke up, he would have a lot of questions to answer. And I intended to get every single answer, no matter what it took. "First, we call the police," I said. "Then when they're done with these three, we go to First National Bank and find out what my mother left for me." And then I picked up my mother's red boxing gloves from where they had fallen during the fight. I slipped them on and felt her strength flow through me once again. "And then," I said, "the silent storm goes hunting." But as I reached for my phone to call the police, it buzzed with an incoming message. I looked at the screen and felt my blood turn to ice. It was from Jerome. "Nice try with Marcus, but he's just the beginning. You think you know the truth? You don't know anything. Come to the old warehouse on 5th in MLK at midnight. Alone, or the next people I send won't be as gentle." Below the message was a photo that made my heart stop beating. It was Coach Bernard, tied to a chair, beaten and bloody, and standing behind him, smiling for the camera, was Jerome. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped the phone. Coach Bernard, the man who had been like a father to me for 15 years. The man who had taught me everything I knew about fighting, about discipline, about being strong when the world wanted to break you down. He was tied to a chair with blood running down his face, and my monster of a husband was standing behind him like he had won some kind of prize. "What is it?" Keisha asked, seeing the color drain from my face. "Amara, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. I just handed her the phone. She looked at the screen and gasped. "Oh my God, that is... Who was that man?" "My coach," I whispered. "The man who trained me. Jerome has him." Keisha's eyes went wide. "We need to call the police right now. This is kidnapping. This is..." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "You saw what the message said. He wants me to come alone. If he sees police, if he even thinks police are involved, he'll hurt Coach Bernard. Maybe kill him. But you can't go alone. You saw what just happened here. These people are serious, Amara. They want you dead." I looked down at Marcus Drake, still unconscious on my floor. She was right. These weren't just angry men with bruised egos. These were killers, professional criminals connected to a network that stretched back 20 years to my parents' murder. And somehow, Jerome was part of it all. How had I been so blind? How had I lived with this man for 5 years and never seen the monster hiding behind his smile? All those times he asked about my childhood, about Mama Rose, about where I grew up. I thought he was being a caring husband. I thought he wanted to know me better. He was gathering information, hunting me like prey. "I have to go," I said quietly. "Coach Bernard saved my life 100 times over. He believed in me when nobody else did. I can't let him die because of me." Keisha grabbed my arm. "Then I'm coming with you." "Keisha, no. It's too dangerous. You've already done so much. You saved my life tonight. But this is my fight, my family's fight. I can't ask you to risk your life too." "You're not asking. I'm telling." Her eyes were fierce, determined. "I spent 10 years being scared. 10 years letting Big Mike push me around because I was afraid of what would happen if I stood up. But watching you today, seeing you fight back, something woke up inside me. I'm done being afraid, Amara, and I'm not letting you walk into that warehouse alone." I looked at this woman I had barely known this morning. This woman who had saved my life with a frying pan. This woman who was willing to face killers because she had finally found her courage. Mama Rose always said that angels come in unexpected forms. Okay, I said, but we need a plan, and we need to be smart about this. I checked the time on my phone. It was just after 8 o'clock. We had 4 hours until midnight. 4 hours to figure out how to rescue Coach Bernard, stop Jerome, and survive whatever trap was waiting for us at that warehouse. First things first, I said. We need to secure these three and make sure they can't warn anyone. We dragged the unconscious men into the basement and tied them to the support beams with every rope, cord, and belt we could find. I gagged them too, just in case they woke up and tried to call for help. Marcus Drake groaned a little when we moved him, but he didn't open his eyes. He said something about my mother making enemies in high places. I told Keisha as we worked. Something about this going all the way to the top. I don't know what that means, but it scares me. High places, like what? The government? Maybe, or business, or something else entirely. My mother was a boxer, not a politician. How could she have made enemies that powerful? It was a question I couldn't answer. Not yet, but I knew the answers were out there somewhere, in that safety deposit box. In the letter my mother wrote me, in the secrets that Mama Rose had carried to her grave. Once the men were secured, I went back upstairs and picked up Marcus's gun from where it had fallen. I had never liked guns. Coach Bernard always said that your body was the only weapon you truly needed. But tonight, facing who knows how many enemies, I wasn't going to be picky about my tools. Do you know how to use that? Keisha asked nervously. Mama Rose taught me the basics when I was 16, I said. She said every woman should know how to protect herself, even if she hoped she'd never have to. Another secret Mama Rose had kept. Another way she had been preparing me for a danger she never explained. I checked the gun, fully loaded. I tucked it into the back of my jeans and covered it with my shirt. Then I grabbed my mother's red boxing gloves and put them in a bag. We need to go somewhere first, I said, before we head to the warehouse. Where? First National Bank on Jefferson Avenue. There's a safety deposit box there with money and a letter from my mother. Whatever's in that box, I have a feeling I'm going to need it. But the bank is closed. It's after 8 on a Sunday. I smiled grimly. Then we'll have to find another way in. Keisha stared at me. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that I've spent 5 years being a good girl, following the rules, waiting for permission. And where did that get me? A husband who hits me, a house full of killers, and a coach about to die because of me. The old Amara is gone, Keisha. From now on, I make my own rules. She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly, peeping. Okay, let's do this. We took Keisha's car and drove across town to Jefferson Avenue. The streets were quiet, most people already home for the night. The bank building loomed ahead of us, dark and silent. Pull around back, I said. There should be a service entrance. I had been to this bank many times with Mama Rose when I was young. She had a checking account here and would bring me along when she made deposits. I remembered there was a back door that employees used and an alarm system that was always acting up. The back of the building was shadowy and deserted. I got out of the car and examined the service entrance, a heavy metal door with a keypad lock. Can you crack it? Keisha whispered. Maybe. I studied the keypad. It was an older model, the kind that shows where patterns on the most used buttons. I could see that the numbers 2, 4, 7, and 9 were more faded than the others. 4 digits, probably a simple code. I tried 2479, nothing. I tried 9742, nothing. I tried 2947. The lock clicked and the door swung open. How did you do that? Keisha breathed. Lucky guess. Actually, it was something another fighter had taught me years ago. Sometimes the simplest approach works best. We slipped inside. The bank was dark except for emergency lights casting dim red shadows across the floor. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight to navigate. Safety deposit boxes should be in the basement, I whispered. Come on. We found the stairs and crept down into the vault area. The safety deposit boxes lined the walls like tiny metal graves, each one holding someone's secrets. I found box number 247, the number Mama Rose had written in her letter. I inserted the small silver key and turned it. The box slid open. Inside was more money than I had ever seen in my life. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills, neatly bundled. There had to be at least $50,000, maybe more. Mama Rose, I whispered. Where did you get all this? But I knew the answer. This wasn't Mama Rose's money. This was my mother's money. Prize money from her boxing career. Money she had saved for me, knowing that one day I might need it. Beneath the cash was a thick envelope with my name written on it, and beneath that was something that made my heart stop. A photograph. A photograph of my mother standing next to a man I recognized from news reports and history books, Senator William Patterson, one of the most powerful politicians in the country, a man who had run for president twice and nearly won, a man who was known for his tough stance on crime and his promises to clean up the streets. In the photograph, he had his arm around my mother's waist. They were both smiling, but it wasn't a casual smile. It was intimate, close, the kind of smile people share when they're in love. Oh my God, I breathed. What is it? Keisha peered over my shoulder. Who's that man? Senator William Patterson. He's been in politics for 30 years. He's practically a legend. And why does he have his arm around your mother like that? I flipped the photograph over. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, were 3 words that changed everything. William, my William. My mother had been in a relationship with Senator William Patterson before she met my father? During? I didn't know, but this photograph explains so much. The enemies in high places, the people who wanted revenge. If my mother had been involved with a powerful politician, if she knew his secrets, if she threatened to expose something about him, that was motive, real motive, the kind of motive that got people killed. I quickly stuffed the money, the photograph, and the envelope into my bag. I would read my mother's letter later when there was time. Right now, I had other priorities. We need to go, I said. We have less than 3 hours to get to the warehouse. We drove back across town, my mind racing with everything I had learned. Senator Patterson was 80 years old now, retired from politics but still powerful. He had connections everywhere. If he was behind my parents' murder, if he had been paying people like Cornelius Drake to keep the secret buried for 20 years. But I couldn't think about that now. Right now, I had to save Coach Bernard. We parked 3 blocks from the warehouse on 5th in MLK. It was an old industrial building, abandoned for years. The perfect place for an ambush. Here's the plan, I said. I go in the front alone like Jerome asked. You go around back and find another way in. If things go bad, if you see them about to kill me or Coach Bernard, you create a distraction, draw their attention, give me a chance to fight. What kind of distraction? I handed her a lighter from my bag. Use your imagination, but don't put yourself in danger unless you absolutely have to. If I don't come out in 20 minutes, you leave. You go to the police and tell them everything. Amara, promise me, Keisha, promise me that if things go wrong, you'll get out and tell the truth. The world needs to know what these people did to my family. She took the lighter with trembling hands. I promise, but nothing is going to go wrong. You're the silent storm, remember? You've got this. I wished I felt as confident as she sounded. I approached the warehouse alone, my mother's boxing gloves in my bag, the gun tucked in my jeans, and my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it inside. The front door was cracked open, dim light spilling out onto the broken concrete. I pushed it wider and stepped inside. The warehouse was huge and mostly empty. Old machinery rusted in corners. Broken windows let moonlight stream in from above. And in the center of the space, lit by a single hanging lamp, was Coach Bernard. He was still tied to the chair, his head hanging down. But he was breathing. I could see his chest rising and falling. He was alive. "Coach," I called out, taking a step toward him. Not so fast. Jerome emerged from the shadows to my left. He was wearing a nice suit, like he was going to a business meeting instead of a kidnapping. His face had been cleaned up since our fight, but I could still see the bruises, the swelling, the evidence of what I had done to him. "I knew you'd come," he said, smiling that cold smile I hated so much. "You're predictable that way, so loyal, so stupid. Let him go, Jerome. This is between you and me." "Oh, it's way bigger than you and me, baby girl." He used the nickname Mama Rose had called me, and it made my skin crawl. "This is about debts that are owed. Legacies that need to end. You're just the last loose thread in a very old story." More figures emerged from the shadows. 4 men, all armed, all looking at me like I was prey. Jerome had come prepared this time. He wasn't going to underestimate me again. "I know about Senator Patterson," I said, trying to buy time. "I know he was involved with my mother. I know he's the one who's been paying you." Jerome's smile faltered for just a second. "You've been busy tonight, but it doesn't matter what you know. Dead women don't talk. Neither do dead men, and I've already left evidence with someone I trust. If I don't walk out of here alive, everything goes to the press. The photographs, the letters, the whole story." I was bluffing. The evidence was in my bag, not with anyone else. But Jerome didn't know that. "You're lying," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Am I? You've been watching me for 3 years, Jerome. You know I'm not stupid. Did you really think I'd walk in here without a backup plan?" He stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed, but it wasn't a confident laugh. It was the laugh of a man who was starting to realize he might have made a mistake. "It doesn't matter," he said finally. "Even if you're telling the truth, you're still going to die. And so is your precious coach. The only question is how much pain you'll experience first." He nodded to his men. 2 of them started walking toward me. This was it, the moment everything would be decided. I reached into my bag and pulled out my mother's red boxing gloves. I slipped them on slowly, deliberately, letting Jerome and his men see exactly what I was doing. "Your mother's gloves," Jerome said, recognizing them. "How touching. You think wearing those will save you?" "No," I said, settling into my fighting stance. "I think being my mother's daughter will save me. I am the daughter of Lightning Lena, the student of Coach Bernard Williams, the woman you call the Silent Storm. And tonight, you're going to learn why storms are something to fear." The 2 men lunged at me. The fight was brutal. These weren't amateurs like the men at the barbecue. These were trained fighters, hired muscle who knew what they were doing. But they didn't know what I could do. I ducked under the first man's swing and drove my fist into his kidney. He grunted in pain, but kept coming. The second man tried to grab me from behind, but I dropped low and swept his legs out. He crashed to the ground, and I was on him instantly, my elbow finding his temple. 1 down. The first man recovered and came at me again, more cautious this time. We circled each other, trading blows. He was strong, but I was faster. Every punch he threw, I dodged. Every kick he attempted, I blocked. And every time he left an opening, I made him pay for it. Finally, I saw my chance. He overextended on a right hook, leaving his chin exposed. I stepped inside his reach and delivered a devastating uppercut that lifted him off his feet. He hit the ground and didn't get up. 2 down, 2 more to go, plus Jerome. But before I could engage the remaining men, I heard the worst sound in the world, A gunshot, then a scream. Not a man's scream, Keisha's scream. I spun around and saw her being dragged into the warehouse by a fifth man I hadn't seen before. He had a gun pressed to her head, and blood was dripping from a wound on her arm. "Keisha," I shouted. "I'm sorry," she cried. "He came out of nowhere. I tried to—" "Shut up," the man growled, pushing her to her knees. Jerome clapped his hands slowly. "Well, well, looks like your backup plan just fell through. Now are you going to be a good girl and come quietly? Or do I have to start shooting your friends?" I looked at Keisha, terrified, on her knees. I looked at Coach Bernard, still unconscious in his chair. I looked at the two remaining armed men, their guns pointed at me. I was trapped, completely and totally trapped. But even in that moment of desperation, something my mother had written in her letter came back to me. Words I had glimpsed when I pulled out the photograph. "Remember, baby girl, the storm is strongest when it seems like all is lost. All is lost, but storms don't give up. Storms keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight for." I slowly raised my hands like I was surrendering. Jerome smiled, thinking he had won. "That's more like it, Upta," he said. "Now take off those ridiculous gloves and—" I didn't let him finish. My hand went to my back, pulling out the gun I had hidden there. In one smooth motion, I aimed and fired, not at Jerome, not at his men, at the hanging lamp above Coach Bernard. The warehouse plunged into darkness, and in that darkness, the silent storm was unleashed like never before. I moved through the shadows like I was born for them. 15 years of training had taught me to fight blind, to sense where my enemies were by the sound of their breathing, the shuffle of their feet. In the dark, I was more dangerous than ever. I heard a man to my left and struck out. My fist connected with flesh. He went down. Another man fired wildly, the muzzle flash briefly lighting up the warehouse. I used that flash to pinpoint his location and was on him before he could fire again. 2 quick strikes, and he crumpled. "Where is she?" Jerome was screaming. "Find her! Kill her!" But they couldn't find me. In the darkness, I was invisible. I was the storm they couldn't see coming. I made my way to Keisha. The man holding her was panicking, waving his gun around blindly. I came up behind him, silent as death, and put him in a chokehold. He struggled for a few seconds, then went limp. "Are you okay?" I whispered to Keisha. "My arm," she gasped. "The bullet grazed me, but I'll live." "Get to Coach Bernard. Untie him. Get him out of here." "What about you?" "I'm going to finish this." I left her and moved through the darkness toward it where I had last heard Jerome's voice. The remaining men were useless now, too scared to move, too blind to fight. It was just Jerome and me. "Amara," his voice came from somewhere ahead, trembling with fear. "Let's talk about this. We can make a deal. I know things about Patterson, about your parents, about everything. I can give you answers." "I don't want your answers," I said, my voice echoing through the warehouse. "I want justice." I found him huddled behind a rusted machine, his gun shaking in his hands. He fired blindly when he heard me approach, but the bullet went wide. I knocked the gun from his hand and grabbed him by the throat. "Please," he whimpered. "Please don't kill me." I looked at this man who had pretended to love me for 5 years, this man who had hit me, degraded me, spied on me for my parents' killers, this man who had taken everything from me and still wanted more. Part of me wanted to end him right there. Part of me wanted to squeeze until he stopped breathing. It would have been so easy, so satisfying, but that's not who I was. That's not who my mother raised me to be. "You're going to prison," I said. "You're going to tell the police everything. About Patterson, about the Drakes, about everyone involved in my parents' murder. And you're going to spend the rest of your miserable life paying for what you've done." I hit him once, hard enough to knock him unconscious. Then I let him fall to the ground. The fight was over when I found Keisha helping Coach Bernard toward the door. He was awake now, limping but alive. When he saw me, tears started rolling down his weathered cheeks. "Amara," he said, his voice hoarse. "My God, Amara. I thought I'd never see you again." I ran to him and threw my arms around him. "I'm here, Coach. I'm here. You're safe now." "I knew you'd come," he whispered. "I knew the silent storm would come." We stumbled out of the warehouse together, bloody and bruised, but alive. Keisha called the police while I held Coach Bernard upright. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. It was over. Jerome was finished. The men who had tried to kill me were defeated. But as I stood there in the cold night air, I knew this was just one battle in a much bigger war. Senator William Patterson was still out there. The man who had ordered my parents' death. The man who had spent 20 years covering up his crimes. He had money, power, and connections that reached into every corner of society. And now he knew that I was coming for him. I pulled my mother's letter out of my bag. There was just enough light from the street to read by. "My dearest Amara," it began. "If you're reading this, it means the truth has finally found you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to explain everything myself. But know that everything I did to protect you. And know that the evidence you need to destroy William Patterson is closer than you think. It's in the place where lightning was born. Follow the storm, my daughter. Follow it all the way to the end. The place where lightning was born. Where lightning was born. Lightning Lena, the gym, Champion's Corner. Where my mother first became a boxer. Where I first learned to fight. That's where the evidence was hidden. That's where I would find everything I needed to bring down a senator." Coach Bernard looked at me with knowing eyes. "You found your mother's letter. You knew about it?" "I knew she hid something at the gym before she died. I never knew what. But I knew that one day her daughter would come looking for it." I folded the letter carefully and put it back in my bag. Tomorrow I would go to Champion's Corner. Tomorrow I would find whatever my mother had left for me. But tonight, as the police cars arrived and the medics rushed to help Keisha and Coach Bernard, I allowed myself one moment of rest. One moment to breathe. One moment to look up at the stars and whisper, "I'm coming, Mama. I'm going to finish what you started." The storm wasn't over yet. It was just getting started. The morning sun rose over Detroit like a promise. Golden light spilled through the hospital window where I sat beside Coach Bernard's bed, watching him sleep. The doctor said he would be fine. Some bruised ribs, a mild concussion, cuts and scrapes that would heal with time. He was tough, my coach. 72 years old and still stronger than men half his age. Keisha was in the room down the hall, getting her arm properly bandaged. The bullet had only grazed her, thank God. She would have a scar, but she would live. When I tried to thank her for everything she had done, she just shook her head and said, "Sisters look out for each other." That's all this was. Sisters. I like that. The police had taken Jerome and his men into custody. Detective Morrison, a tall woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, had questioned me for 3 hours. I told her everything about Jerome's abuse, about the attack at my house, about the kidnapping and the warehouse fight. I showed her the photograph of my mother with Senator Patterson, and I watched her eyes go wide with recognition. "This is going to be complicated," she said quietly. "Patterson has friends everywhere, powerful friends. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" "My parents were murdered," I replied. "I'm sure." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll help you however I can. But be careful, Mrs. Johnson. Men like Patterson don't go down without a fight." Now, sitting in the pale morning light, I thought about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday morning, I had been a scared, beaten down housewife who couldn't even stand up to her husband. Today, I was something else entirely. Something stronger. Something my mother would have been proud of. Coach Bernard stirred and opened his eyes. When he saw me, he smiled. "Still here," he said, his voice rough from sleep. Where else would I be? He reached out and took my hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were sharp as ever. You fought well last night, he said. Your mother would have been proud. I learned from the best. He chuckled, then winced as his ribs protested. I always knew there was something special about you, Amara. From the first day Rose brought you to my gym, you had fire in your eyes, the same fire Lena had. You knew my mother well, didn't you? He was quiet for a moment. I trained her, from the time she was 15 until the day she died. She was like a daughter to me, and when she asked me to watch over you, to keep you safe, I promised I would. Why didn't you ever tell me about who she really was? Rose made me promise. She was so scared, Amara. Scared that if you knew the truth, you would go looking for answers. And she knew that answers could get you killed. He squeezed my hand, but I kept something for you. Something your mother left at the gym before she died. I've been waiting 20 years to give it to you. The place where lightning was born, just like my mother's letter said. I need to go there, I said, to the gym today. Coach Bernard nodded. The floorboard's in my office, third one from the window. It's loose. Your mother hid something underneath it. I never looked. It wasn't meant for me. I leaned down and kissed his forehead. Rest, coach. Get better. When this is all over, we have a lot of catching up to do. Be careful, little storm, he said, using my mother's nickname for me. A nickname I didn't even know she had given me until now. The truth can be a dangerous thing. Champion's Corner looked exactly the same as it had when I was 12 years old. The same cracked windows, the same peeling paint, the same faded sign above the door. But this time, I wasn't a scared little girl looking for a way to protect herself. I was a woman looking for answers. Keisha had insisted on coming with me, her arm in a sling, but her spirit unbroken. You're not doing this alone, she said. Not anymore. We pushed through the front door and stepped into the gym. It was early, not yet open for the day. Heavy bags hung from the ceiling like sleeping giants. The ring in the center sat empty, waiting for the next fighters to dance across its canvas. This place is amazing, Keisha whispered. I can feel the history here. She was right. Champions had trained in this gym. Legends had been born between these walls. My mother had become Lightning Lena right here in this very building. I led the way to Coach Bernard's office in the back. It was a small room cluttered with trophies, photographs, and decades of memories. I found the window and counted 3 floorboards over. Here, I said, kneeling down. The floorboard was loose, just like Coach said. I pried it up with my fingers and found a hollow space beneath. Inside was a metal lockbox, covered in dust, but still intact. My hands were shaking as I lifted it out and set it on Coach Bernard's desk. Keisha stood beside me, her eyes wide with anticipation. Open it, she said softly. I took a deep breath and flipped the latch. Inside was a treasure trove of evidence, documents, photographs, tape recordings, letters, everything carefully organized and labeled in my mother's handwriting. The first document I pulled out was a contract, a legal agreement between Senator William Patterson and Cornelius Drake, dated 25 years ago. It outlined a partnership for mutual business interests, which was clearly code for illegal gambling operations. Patterson had been financing Drake's criminal empire in exchange for a cut of the profits. A sitting senator involved in organized crime, Keisha breathed. This is huge, but that was just the beginning. There were photographs of Patterson meeting with known criminals. There were bank records showing payments from shell companies linked to his campaign fund. There were letters he had written to Drake discussing how to handle problems that arose from their partnership. And then I found the recording. It was an old cassette tape labeled simply Insurance. I found a dusty tape player on Coach Bernard's shelf and popped it in. Senator Patterson's voice filled the room, clear as day. The situation with Lena Williams has become untenable. She's threatening to go public with everything, the contracts, the payments, our entire arrangement. She needs to be dealt with permanently. Another voice responded, Cornelius Drake. That's going to cost extra. She's got protection, and she's not the type to go quietly. I don't care what it costs. Make it happen, and make it look like an accident. I have an election in 2 years. I can't have any scandals. What about the kid? She's got a daughter. There was a long pause. Then Patterson's voice again, cold as ice. The daughter is irrelevant. She's just a baby. She won't remember anything. Leave her alive. Killing a child draws too much attention. The tape ended. I sat there in stunned silence, tears streaming down my face. I had just heard the man who ordered my parents' murder. I had heard him discuss it like it was nothing, like they were just problems to be solved, like their lives meant nothing. Amara, Keisha said gently, putting her good hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? He killed them, I whispered. He killed my parents because my mother was going to expose him. She knew everything about his crimes and she was brave enough to speak out. And he murdered her for it. I thought about my mother, Lightning Lena, who had refused to throw fights for criminals and refused to stay silent when she discovered the truth about a powerful senator. She could have taken money and looked the other way. She could have kept quiet and kept her family safe. But that wasn't who she was. She was a fighter, in the ring and out of it. She stood up for what was right, even when it cost her everything. And now I understood why, because some things are more important than safety. Some things are worth dying for. My mother had died trying to bring down a corrupt senator. She had gathered all this evidence, hidden it away, and trusted that one day someone would find it and finish what she started. That someone was me. I carefully packed all the evidence back into the lockbox. Then I pulled out my phone and called Detective Morrison. I have everything, I told her. Documents, photographs, recordings, everything you need to bring down Senator William Patterson. Can you meet me? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Morrison spoke again, her voice was serious. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't move. And Amara, you just made history. The arrest of Senator William Patterson was broadcast on every news channel in the country. Cameras captured him being led out of his mansion in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. For 30 years, he had been untouchable. The most powerful man in Detroit, some said, a legend in American politics. But legends can fall, and sometimes they fall hard. The evidence my mother had gathered was overwhelming. Combined with testimony from Jerome, who was eager to make a deal, and corroborating evidence from the FBI's own investigation, Patterson didn't stand a chance. He was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, corruption, and a dozen other crimes. His lawyers tried to delay, to negotiate, to find some way out, but there was no escape. The trial lasted 3 months. I was there every single day, sitting in the front row wearing my mother's red boxing gloves around my neck like a pendant. Every time Patterson looked at me, I stared right back. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to know that Lightning Lena's daughter had destroyed him. When the verdict came back guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted in chaos. Patterson screamed that he had been framed, that it was all lies, that powerful people would avenge him. But nobody was listening anymore. His power was gone. His legacy was ash. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As they led him away in chains, Patterson looked at me one last time. His eyes were filled with hatred, but also something else, fear. He was afraid of me. This old, powerful man who had ordered the death of my parents was afraid of the woman I had become. My mother sends her regards, I said quietly. He flinched like I had hit him. Then they took him away, and I never saw him again. After the trial, I did something I had been wanting to do for 20 years. I visited my parents' graves. They were buried side by side in a small cemetery on the outskirts of Detroit. Simple headstones marked their resting place. Leonard Williams, beloved husband and father. Elena, Lena Williams, beloved wife and mother. Lightning in the ring, angel in our hearts. I knelt between their graves and placed a single red rose on each one. I found the truth, I said softly. I found everything you hid from me, Mama, and I finished what you started. Patterson is in prison. The Drakes are in prison. Jerome is in prison. Everyone who hurt our family is paying for what they did. The wind rustled through the trees, gentle as a whisper. I'm sorry I never got to know you. I'm sorry we didn't get more time together. But I want you to know that I'm proud to be your daughter. I'm proud to carry your legacy, and I promise I will never stop fighting for what's right. I stayed there for a long time, just talking to them, telling them about my life, about Mama Rose and Coach Bernard, about the fights I had won and the struggles I had faced, about Jerome and how I had finally broken free. By the time I left, the sun was setting again, another day ending, another chapter closing, but tomorrow a new chapter would begin. 6 months after the trial ended, I stood in front of a champion's corner with a pair of giant scissors in my hands. A crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Reporters, neighbors, former fighters, and new students who had heard about the gym's grand reopening. Coach Bernard stood beside me, fully recovered and grinning from ear to ear. Keisha was there too, along with her 2 kids and her new boyfriend, a kind man named David who treated her like a queen. Big Mike had entered a treatment program for abusers and was slowly becoming a better man. Darnell and Terrence had both written me letters apologizing for what they had done. I hadn't forgiven them yet, but I was working on it. The gym had been completely renovated, new equipment, fresh paint, clean windows that let in the sunshine. But I had kept some things the same. The old photographs of champions on the walls, the original ring where my mother had trained, the spirit of the place that had made so many fighters believe in themselves. And above the door, a new sign. Lightning's Legacy, a gym for champions. You ready? Coach Bernard asked. I looked at the crowd, at the young girls in the front row, their eyes wide with excitement, at the mothers holding their daughters' hands, hoping to give them the gift of strength, at the people who had come to witness the next chapter of a story that had started 25 years ago. I'm ready, I said. I cut the ribbon and the crowd cheered. That night, we had a celebration at the gym. Music playing, food everywhere, people laughing and dancing. It felt like a family reunion, even though most of these people had been strangers just a year ago. At some point, I found myself alone in Coach Bernard's office. I was looking at a photograph on the wall. My mother, young and strong, holding up a championship belt. She was smiling at the camera like she had conquered the world. She would be so proud of you. I turned to find Coach Bernard standing in the doorway. You think so? I know so. He walked over and stood beside me, looking at the photograph. You're just like her, you know. Same fire, same heart, same stubborn refusal to back down when things get hard. I laughed. I learned from the best. He put his arm around my shoulders. What are you going to do now, Amara? You've got the whole world ahead of you. I thought about it, really thought about it. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. No abusive husband, no secrets hanging over me, no enemies hunting me. I could do anything, go anywhere, be anyone. But I already knew what I wanted to do. I'm going to train, I said. I'm going to get back in shape, and then I'm going to fight again. Coach Bernard raised an eyebrow. Professional? Maybe, but that's not why I want to do it. I want to show people what's possible. I want to show women like me, women who have been beaten down and told they're worthless. that they can be strong, that they can fight back, that they can win. The silent storm returns, Coach Bernard said with a smile. No, I shook my head. Not the silent storm. Not anymore. I'm done being silent. From now on, I'm lightning, just like my mother. Lightning that everyone can see coming. He laughed and pulled me into a hug. And let's get to work, Lightning. We've got a lot of training to do. A year later, I stood in a real boxing ring for the first time since my injury. The arena was packed with thousands of people, all cheering and chanting my name. Cameras flashed from every direction. The whole world was watching. My opponent was a younger fighter, quick and talented. She had won 12 fights in a row and was heavily favored to beat me. The announcers said I was too old, too out of practice, too damaged by everything I had been through. They didn't know me very well. The bell rang and we touched gloves. Then the fight began. It wasn't easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. She was fast and she hit hard. She pushed me back in the first round, landing shots that made the crowd gasp. By the end of the third round, I had a cut above my eye and my ribs were screaming in pain. But I had been through worse. I had survived an abusive husband. I had fought off kidnappers and killers. I had brought down a corrupt senator and exposed a conspiracy that had been hidden for 20 years. This was just a boxing match. This was nothing compared to what I had already overcome. In the fourth round, I found my rhythm. In the fifth, I started landing combinations that made her stumble. In the sixth, I knocked her down for the first time. She got back up. Good fighters always do. We traded blows for 3 more rounds, neither one of us willing to quit. The crowd was on their feet, screaming with every punch. In the final round, I saw my opening. She threw a wild right hook, leaving her chin exposed. I stepped inside her reach, just like I had done to Jerome a lifetime ago, and delivered an uppercut that started from my toes and ended at her jaw. She went down and didn't get back up. The referee counted to 10. The bell rang, and the announcer's voice boomed through the arena. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner by knockout, the new champion, Amara Lightning Williams. The crowd exploded. Keisha rushed into the ring and threw her arms around me, crying and laughing at the same time. Coach Bernard climbed through the ropes, tears streaming down his weathered face. Even Detective Morrison was there, cheering from the front row. But in that moment of victory, I wasn't thinking about the championship belt they placed around my waist. I wasn't thinking about the money or the fame or the reporters clamoring for interviews. I was thinking about my mother. I looked up at the lights above the ring, so bright they looked like stars. I did it, Mama, I whispered. I finished what you started. I made them pay, and I showed the world what lightning can do. Somewhere, somehow, I knew she could hear me. I knew she was proud, and I knew that this was just the beginning. Because I was Amara Lightning Williams, daughter of fighters, student of champions, survivor of storms. And my story was far from over. In the weeks after my championship victory, I used my platform to speak out about domestic violence. I shared my story with anyone who would listen. The abuse I had suffered, the silence I had kept, the moment I finally found the courage to fight back. Letters poured in from women all over the country, women who saw themselves in my story, women who had been told they were worthless, weak, unlovable, women who needed to hear that they could be strong too. I answered every single one. With the prize money from my fights and the settlement from my divorce, I opened a foundation in my mother's name. The Lightning Lena Foundation helped women escape abusive situations, provided self-defense training, and offered scholarships for girls who wanted to pursue athletics. Champions Corner became the headquarters for the foundation. Every week, we held free classes for women and girls who wanted to learn to protect themselves. Some of them came in scared and broken, just like I had been all those years ago. But they left standing taller, their fists raised, their eyes full of fire. Keisha became my partner in running the foundation. She had gone back to school to get her degree in social work, and she brought a compassion and understanding to our work that I couldn't have matched alone. Together, we helped hundreds of women start new lives. Coach Bernard trained fighters until his 85th birthday when he finally agreed to retire. But even then, he came to the gym every day, sitting in his corner chair, watching the next generation of champions learn their craft. And me, I kept fighting, in the ring and out of it. I won 3 more championships before my body finally told me it was time to stop. But by then, it didn't matter. I had accomplished everything I set out to do and more. On the anniversary of my parents' death, I visit their graves every year. I bring red roses and I talk to them about my life, about the fighters I've trained, about the women I've helped, about the legacy they left behind that I have carried forward. And every time as I'm leaving, I feel the wind pick up around me, gentle but strong, like a storm that has found its peace, like lightning finally coming home. The end. Thank you for watching this story until the very end. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe that you can overcome anything life throws at you, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Remember, no matter what you're going through, no matter how dark things seem, there is strength inside you that you haven't discovered yet. You are more powerful than you know. You are braver than you believe. You are the storm, and storms always find a way to shine